Good evening. You're watching The Big Story with Hsien Sudirman. I'm Olivia Quay. Subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode.
Singaporeans will go to the polls on July 10th in an extraordinary general election due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The widely anticipated announcement came earlier this afternoon as President Halimah Yacob dissolved Parliament and issued the Writ of Election.
Prime Minister Loong said in a speech earlier that holding an election now when things are relatively stable will clear the decks and give the new government a fresh mandate to lead the country out of the current crisis.
This general election will be like no other that we have experienced. Not just because of the special arrangements to deal with COVID-19, but because of the gravity of the situation and the issues at stake. The government that you elect will have critical decisions to make. These decisions will impact your lives and livelihoods and shape Singapore for many years to come, far beyond the 5-year term of the next government. Soon, you will have the chance to decide whom to entrust with the responsibility of working with you to take our country forward. I have every confidence that you will think carefully and vote wisely to secure our lives, our jobs, and our future.
Nomination day will be on June 30th, a Tuesday, just a week from today. This will be followed by 9 days of campaigning before cooling off day on July the 9th. Polling day on the 10th will be a public holiday, and on that day, around 2.65 million voters will be heading to the polls, an increase of around 193,000 at the 2015 election.
At stake are 93 seats in Parliament in 17 GRCs and 14 SMCs. That's up from 89 seats after changes to electoral boundaries in March. Changes to the Constitution in 2016 will also guarantee that there will be at least 12 opposition MPs in Parliament if there are fewer than 12 elected opposition members. Non-constituency MPs will also have full voting rights.
As the threat of COVID-19 looms over this GE, safe distancing rules will be in place, such as not having more than 5 people in a group at any one time. This means that traditional campaign staples like mass rallies cannot be held. Political parties also have to scale back on the scope of their walkabouts, as we saw this past weekend.
However, candidates can turn to cyberspace and social media to get their messages across to the electorate. As announced by the Elections Department last week, each candidate will also get airtime on national television as part of new one-off constituency political broadcasts.
Jobs, the state of the economy and the government's plan to see Singapore through the pandemic and beyond will be prominent issues in this election. To take this discussion further, we're joined by news editor at the Straits Times, Zakir Hussain. So Zakir, let's talk about PM Lee's speech first. What stood out the most for you?
I think it's we've had various steps to the election in the past few weeks. The national broadcasts by 6 ministers, the announcements of new polling guidelines and campaigning rules by the Elections Department. And I think today PM Lee clearly articulated why the government and the People's Action Party needs to go to the polls. I think he painted a picture of the tough environment outside. We're at this stable point in tackling COVID. Cases have come down. We're just emerging from the circuit breaker. But you never know how things might pan out in the coming weeks and months. The external environment is also a bit turbulent, not just US-China tensions, but recently you had sort of tensions at the border between India and China. The regional environment is unclear. And all this requires a government that has strong backing from Singaporeans. And an election, PM Lee said, I think is needed. It's, constitutionally we need to have an election soon. And this is as good a time as any to call for an election.
Mm-hmm. Right. Zakir, so on that note, is it a good time then to call an election? Because we are in the middle of a pandemic.
That's right. But I think as we saw over the last weekend, malls, parks were full of people, I think, emerging from the circuit breaker. And although they were encouraged to observe safe distancing rules, in some cases it wasn't always possible. I think campaign activity and even the measures in place at polling stations are probably going to make this a safe experience for voters. Even details of nomination day proceedings, which are yet to be announced. There's been hints that candidates can only move about in groups of 5. Walkabouts will still be allowed, but it's no longer the case where a whole GRC's candidates can move around in groups of 10 or 20 at markets and so on. You're going to see a lot of door-to-door activity, small group campaigning. There won't be traditional rallies, but instead there'll be a lot of online activity and engagement. And I think this is quite unique, I think, this election.
Well, Zakir, at the last GE in 2015, the ruling People's Action Party secured 69.9% of the popular vote. Among other factors, analysts have attributed that to policy changes addressing the public's concerns, the feel-good effect from Singapore's 50th birthday, as well as the death of Mr. Lee Kuan Yew that March. Now, under the cloud of COVID-19, how do you think the PAP will perform this time?
I think that's an interesting question. Crisis, elections held during crises years in the past have always seen a flight to safety. 2001, the PAP scored 75% of the vote. 2015, not so much a sense of crisis, but the feel-good factor, they got 69.9%. I think we're probably looking at a result around that range. There's a lot of anxiety and concern over jobs and the economy. People do want, to feel reassured, and I think some of the measures and reassurances that have come about in recent weeks do, I think, address some of the uncertainty and anxieties to a large extent. There are, however, still some sore points. I think, the prospect of unemployment, even questions over immigration policy, these could be issues or considerations at the back of the mind of voters.
Well, we'll hear more from Zakir later on in the show. That was our news editor, Zakir Hussain.
There will be 9 nomination centres for this general election. Candidates running in the electoral divisions of Bishan Toa Payoh, Jalan Besar, Radin Mas and Tanjung Pagar have to file their papers at Bendemeer Primary School.
Those in Kebun Baru, Marsiling UT, Nee Soon and Sembawang will be at Chung Fu School, while candidates for Aljunied, Ang Mo Kio, Marymount and Yio Chu Kang will go to De Yi Secondary School.
Jurong Pioneer Junior College will be the nomination place for candidates contesting Choa Chu Kang, Hong Kah North and Pioneer. Meanwhile, those in MacPherson, Marine Parade, Mountbatten and Potong Pasir will file their papers at Kong Wah School.
Candidates in the Bukit Panjang and Holland Bukit Timah divisions will go to the Methodist Girls' School, with those in Bukit Batok, Jurong, West Coast and Yuhua at Nanhua High School.
Hougang and Tampines candidates will go to Poi Ching School. And the last nomination centre is at St. Anthony's Canossian Primary School, where those in East Coast, Pasir Ris Punggol, Punggol West and Sengkang will submit their papers.
Now, this general election will see changes to the electoral boundaries and the number of MPs. There will be 93 MPs, 4 more than the 89 in the last parliament.
There are also more voters, with 2.65 million heading to the polls, up from 2.46 million in the 2015 election. The maximum number of non-constituency MPs will also grow from 9 to 12. There are 14 SMCs and 17 GRCs, up from the current 13 SMCs and 16 GRCs. 4 SMCs are new: Punggol West, Kebun Baru, Marymount and Yio Chu Kang.
A new 4-member Sengkang GRC is created by merging the former Sengkang West and Punggol East SMCs, as well as parts of Pasir Ris Punggol GRC. 3 SMCs are taken off the map: Punggol East, Sengkang West and Fengshan.
There are also no more 6-member GRCs. Ang Mo Kio and Pasir Ris Punggol GRC will become 5-member GRCs. Meanwhile, East Coast GRC and West Coast GRC have each grown from 4-member to 5-member GRCs.
At the SMC level, the Joo Seng area of Marine Parade GRC will be in Potong Pasir SMC, while residents of Lorong 8 Toa Payoh will now vote in Bishan Toa Payoh GRC. Fengshan residents are now part of East Coast GRC.
Meanwhile, Sengkang West's residents find themselves split. More than half will join the new 4-member Sengkang GRC and the rest will go to Ang Mo Kio GRC. All of Punggol East's residents will also vote in Sengkang GRC, as will some in the Buangkok and Sengkang Central areas of Pasir Ris Punggol GRC.
At the GRC level, some residents in Balestier and Novena estates under Bishan Toa Payoh GRC are now in Jalan Besar GRC. Woodlands residents living near the Woodlands Civic Centre, Singapore Sports School and Woodgrove Primary School will move from Sembawang GRC to Marsiling UT GRC.
Sembawang GRC residents in the Yishun Link area on the edge of Yishun New Town will move to Nisun GRC. Some residents in the Nanyang ward of Chua Chu Kang GRC and some in Hong Kong North SMC adjoining them will come under West Coast GRC. You can visit the Elections Department website to find out your electoral division.
Meanwhile, the Health Ministry confirmed 119 new COVID-19 cases today. There are 3 cases in the community. 1 is a Singaporean or permanent resident and 2 are work pass holders.
Migrant workers living in dormitories form the remaining cases. Singapore's total cases now stands at over 42,400. More details will be released later.
In other news, this morning's heavy downpour caused flash floods in Jurong Town Hall Road, Opera Estate and New Upper Changi Road. Video clips uploaded to Twitter and Facebook showed Bedok Canal filled to the brim and 2 vehicles submerged in water at the intersection of Upper Changi Road and Bedok North Avenue 4 near Changi Fire Station. National Water Agency PUB said that flash floods at all locations subsided by 9:20 a.m.
The Workers' Party looks to have set its sights on 5 constituencies in the upcoming general election. Party members who spoke on condition of anonymity said the WP leadership has decided to contest Aljunied, East Coast Marine Parade GRCs, Hougang SMC and the new Sengkang GRC. This is half the number it contested in 2015. Its slate of 20 candidates will likely also spot fewer new faces. In the last election, WP contested 10 constituencies and fielded 28 candidates. 16 of them were newcomers.
With the election approaching, here are the seats to watch when Singaporeans head to the polls on July the 10th. The Workers' Party, led by Mr. Lau Tia Kiang, wrestled Aljunied GRC from the People's Action Party in a historic victory in 2011. But in 2015, WP managed to just cling on with 50.95% of the vote. The GRC is likely to again provide the hottest contest between the ruling party and the WP. The issue of the WP leader's management of the town council's finances is likely to play a key role in whether it is able to hold on to the GRC, as the matter is still unresolved.
WP is expected to put up a fight in East Coast GRC again this year, having contested there in the last 3 elections. It is still unknown who will be leading the charge for PAP, as Mr. Lim Swee Se and Mr. Lee Hsien are expected to step down. Fengshan is back in the GRC after it was carved out as a single seat in the last general election. East Coast was the PAP's worst performing GRC in the 2015 election.
The new Sengkang GRC has been formed by merging Sengkang Central from Pasir Ris Punggol GRC, Punggol East and parts of Sengkang West. Punggol East and Sengkang West have traditionally been stomping grounds for the Workers' Party, and the party's Li Lian is expected to lead the team to contest the GRC. The PAP team will likely consist of Labour Chief Ng Chee Meng and Senior Minister of State for Transport and Health Lam Pin Min.
West Coast GRC appears to be another hot battleground, with former MP Tan Cheng Bock expected to lead a team from the Progress Singapore Party to contest there. Dr. Tan is a familiar face in the area, having held the Ayer Rajah seat for the PAP for 26 years. The Reform Party has also announced plans to contest there. Communications and Information Minister S. Iswaran and former Minister Lim Heng Kiang are among the team currently at the helm of the GRC.
There could also be three-cornered fights in some SMCs, including Kebun Baru, Marymount and Yio Chu Kang.
News editor Zakir Hussain joins us again to discuss the changes in this election. Welcome back, Zakir. Zakir, the Workers' Party has announced that it would be contesting in 5 constituencies. This is fewer than in 2015. Any idea why this is so?
I think the WP has decided that perhaps this time it wants to conserve its energies, I think, and focus on defending what the constituencies where it has been working the ground more actively rather than aggressively expand. Perhaps it's also reading the mood of voters in this election. And I think a lot of the WP's attention will be spent on, I think, defending its turf in Aljunied GRC as well as Hokang, where it's also likely to see a change in some of its MPs, given the party said it's committed to leadership transition and all. We're expecting, I think, Hokang to see a new WP candidate. And I think some of the WP will also be fielding newer faces in areas like Sengkang, where it's been working the ground quite actively, as well as East Coast and Marine Parade. One other issue that's, I think, likely to be raised by the PAP at the hustings is the WP's management of its town council. We had a fairly high-profile court case going on over the past few years. It's still at the appeal stage now, but it's likely to be brought up again as an example at the hustings.
Right. Well, WP narrowly won in Aljunied in 2015. It also won Hougang by a smaller margin than in 2011. So you talked a little bit about these two constituencies just now, but how do you see the contest shaping up in these two areas this time around?
I expect the contest will be fairly close this time around as well. WP's got a loyal base, and I think it's got considerable support from a large number of residents in Aljunied GRC still. But at the same time, issues like town council management, as well as concerns over jobs, would still figure in the minds of voters. So I think it's no coincidence that Aljunied is likely to see one of the toughest contests this election, especially if the PAP were to, say, field high-profile candidates or to make a concerted pitch to win the constituency back after nearly 10 years. Hokang, well, WP's held it since 1991, and this will likely be, this is the third, the WP's fielding its 4th candidate in Hokang. A lot of voters in Hokang are still proud that theirs remains this opposition stronghold. But as we've seen in previous polls, I think the PAP's candidate has also been working the ground fairly hard. And I think we'll probably also see a tough fight in Hokang this time around.
Well, thank you so much, Zakir, for coming on to speak with us. We were speaking to news editor Zakir Hussain on the changes in the upcoming election. The Writ of Election was just announced earlier by President Halimah Yacob.
Singaporeans will go to the polls on July the 10th to vote in the upcoming election. But now for the global headlines, let's go to Dylan Ang.
Thanks, guys. The Trump administration is introducing a series of new restrictions on visas that allow immigrants to temporarily work in the United States, a move the White House said would help the coronavirus-battered economy. The block will affect a range of visas for foreign workers, including seasonal workers, managers and specialized workers. The visa suspension takes effect tomorrow and runs to the end of the year. Officials say the move will open up 525,000 jobs for US workers. Health authorities in South Korea said for the first time that it is in the midst of a second wave of coronavirus infections, focused around its densely populated capital. Previously, the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention had maintained that the first wave had not ended. New cases spiked as the country announced it was easing social distancing guidelines in early May. South Korea has reported a total of 12,438 cases, with 280 deaths. Former US National Security Advisor John Bolton said President Donald Trump went into his 2018 summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Singapore, viewing it as a publicity exercise. The meeting was hailed by some as a historic step forward for relations between the two countries, though critics argued that the joint statement was too vague and lacked a concrete timeline and process. In his memoir, Mr. Bolton sides with the critics, writing that the president was more interested in optics than the actual substance of the historic summit. According to him, Mr. Trump had wanted to go to Singapore because it will be great theatre. Google said it will start showing fact-checking labels on Google Images search results globally as tech companies come under increasing pressure to combat the viral spread of misleading claims online. Google will display the fact-check labels under thumbnails in image search results, along with a summary of third-party fact-checkers' findings, as it already does on its general search engine and on Google News results. It joins tech giants Twitter and Facebook, who have also introduced fact-checking programs and warning labels for manipulated media. And that is what's happening beyond our borders. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Dylan. Well, those are our top stories for today. For more news and videos, visit straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below.
You can also bookmark our GE2020 microsite to follow our live blog and get all the latest election news. Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Olivia Quay. Join us tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.